A man went to the church and begged the preacher to forgive him because he had committed so many sins. He said that he had killed his father, his mother, and even his brother. He said that he was an outlaw who had robbed many people in his life. But when the preacher asked why he came to the church, he said that he wanted to ask God for forgiveness. The preacher told him that he should get out of there and go rob another bank. And the man wondered why. The preacher said, "You're not sorry for what you did. If you were sorry, you wouldn't be here begging for forgiveness. You would have stayed out there and kept doing it." Watch this short video to know the full story and subscribe to be inspired by the stories we tell. Hello friends. Welcome back to our channel. Here we share stories that will inspire you, motivate you, and put a smile on your face. So without any further delay, let's begin. It was the afternoon of a Sunday when a man walked into the small-town church. Atay's head hung low and his shoulders slumped forward, hiding his face. He shuffled up to the altar and dropped to his knees in front of the astonished preacher. He began to beg the preacher to forgive him for his sins. The preacher, taken aback by this strange request, tried to understand what had brought the man to him. The man, overcome with guilt and remorse, confessed to killing his father, his mother, and even his own brother. He spoke of how he had turned to a life of crime and had robbed countless people. Tears streamed down his face as he poured out his heart, seeking absolution from the preacher. But as the preacher listened to these horrifying tales, a sense of disbelief and skepticism washed over him. He couldn't comprehend why someone could confess to such heinous acts and still expect forgiveness. The preacher, though a man of faith, found himself torn between the teachings of mercy and his own struggle to believe the sincerity of this tormented soul. As the confession continued, the preacher felt a growing unease. Could this be an act? Was the man truly repentant, or was he merely seeking to manipulate him? The gravity of the accusations made by the man, the preacher thought, demanded careful consideration. After all, he didn't want to be fooled into granting forgiveness to a deceitful individual. Once the man finished his sorrowful tale, he looked up at the preacher with pleading eyes, hoping for a glimmer of understanding and pardon. But the preacher, still grappling with his own doubts, hesitated to offer the forgiveness the man so desperately sought. The silence stretched on, punctuated only by the man's stifled sobs, making the moments feel like an eternity. Finally, after what seemed like an age, the preacher broke the silence. His voice, however, betrayed the turmoil in his heart. "Why did you come to me?" he asked, his tone laced with suspicion. The man's head snapped up, his eyes wide with surprise at the preacher's words. I came to ask God for forgiveness," he stammered, his voice cracking with emotion. "To ask God for forgiveness," the preacher echoed, his gaze piercing. "Then go back out there and ask him, 'What brings you to me?'" The man hesitated, his eyes dropping to the floor as he struggled to find the right words. I thought," he began, his voice barely a whisper, "that you could pray for me. That you could help me get closer to God." The preacher stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor, drawing attention from the other church members who had gathered around. Get closer to God, he scoffed. You want to get closer to God after what you've done? After taking innocent lives? After causing pain and suffering? His voice rose with each word, echoing the pain and disbelief in his heart. Do you think God is so easily accessible? Do you believe He will forgive you just because I pray for you? The man's body trembled, not just from the cold church air, but from the intensity of the preacher's words. He looked up, his eyes pleading for understanding, but the preacher was not moved. No, the preacher said, his voice softening slightly, but no less firm. God's forgiveness is not something you can just ask for. It's earned through repentance, through genuine remorse, and a commitment to change. You haven't done any of those things. You merely confessed, but confession alone cannot wash away the stains of your actions. The man's shoulders slumped, his face crumpling with despair. The weight of the preacher's words pressed down on him, reminding him that true repentance was more than just words. It was a transformation of the heart and a dedication to a life of virtue. "But I am sorry," the man whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion. "I am truly sorry for what I have done. If only I could take it all back." The preacher shook his head slowly, his gaze unwavering. "If you were sorry, you wouldn't be here begging for forgiveness. You would have stayed out there and kept doing it," he said, gesturing vaguely to the life the man had described. The man looked up, his eyes wide with a mix of confusion and hurt. "What do you mean, Ka? You said you killed your father, your mother, and your brother. Let me guess. They caught you robbing the family jewels, and you couldn't bear the shame, so you took their lives and stole their possessions. Then you bragged about your crimes, relishing in the fear you instilled in others. And now you seek forgiveness to ease your guilty conscience. Is that it?" The man's face drained of color, his eyes filled with anguish. "That's not true," he whispered, his voice shaking. I swear it. I didn't kill them out of greed or selfishness." "Oh, really?" the preacher sneered, his disbelief evident. "Then care to explain why you boasted about your crimes, huh? Why you confessed to me if you were truly sorry? A truly sorry person doesn't revel in their misdeeds, okay? They hide in shame, seeking atonement, not attention." The man's lips trembled, but he remained silent, unable to refute the preacher's words. "There is no evidence to support your claims, only your word against the eternal truth. I cannot, in good conscience, grant you the forgiveness you seek. If you are indeed sorry, prove it. Stop begging and start acting. Go out there and right your wrongs. Make amends for the harm you've caused. Show me that you've changed, that you've repented. Only then can we talk about forgiveness." The man looked at the preacher, his eyes pleading, but the preacher remained resolute. He knew that true repentance wasn't a one-time confession, but a lifelong journey of atonement and self-improvement. With a defeated sigh, the man got up from his knees. He understood the preacher's words, even if he couldn't immediately follow them. He knew he couldn't keep begging for forgiveness while continuing to live a life of sin. He had to prove his repentance through his actions. As he walked out of the church, the whispers of the other church members followed him, their murmurs echoing his shame. But amidst the whispers, he heard the preacher's words ringing clear, urging him to change his ways. Determined to prove his sincerity, the man decided to turn his life around. He started small, helping out at a local soup kitchen, donating to charity and volunteering at a homeless shelter. He reached out to the families he had harmed, offering whatever money he had left to try to make amends. Though he knew it wouldn't erase his past, he hoped it would show his commitment to change. Years went by and the man's reputation began to shift. He became known for his generosity and kindness, not for his past sins. He never forgot the day he was turned away from the church, but he used it as motivation to become a better person. One day, he decided to return to the church. He had heard the preacher had passed away, but he wanted to apologize to the congregation and tell them about his journey. As he stepped into the church, now filled with sunlight and laughter, he saw the new preacher. Gathering his courage, he walked up to him and explained his past, asking for forgiveness once again. The new preacher listened patiently, his gaze kind and understanding. When the man finished, he placed a hand on his shoulder. "I believe you have shown true repentance," he said. "You have lived a life of service, trying to undo the harm you caused. The congregation and I forgive you." Tears filled the man's eyes as he realized his long journey had brought him to this moment. He had been forgiven not just by the church, but by himself, too. He had learned that forgiveness was not easy, but it was possible. True repentance, he realized, was about acknowledging one's mistakes, making amends, and striving to be a better person every day.